Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track. It's America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob. I'm wearing a Haas hat. Rob, how are you, man?
I'm great, and I almost can't look at the screen because you might need to change your name to Chuck or something because you just look like a trucker wearing that hat, and it's quite
Between
distracting. But
my scruffy beard and my Haas hat.
yeah, your free Haas hat that cost you $27, but
I also got a beanie with it. There's nothing like waking up on Black Friday and getting a note that says, hey, we're giving away hats in the Haas store. And you're like, hey, I'm in for that. So I buy the $13 beanie, which was the cheapest item in the entire Haas store. I checked. And then they want $15 for shipping. But at this point, I was pot committed, so I went for it. And then the best part is they run a small mom and pop operation. So someone named Molly was looking for the money. And I got a note that Molly has run a payment on your Chase card for $27. I'm like, who the hell is Molly? I asked my wife, I go, do you know Molly?
You're just a marketer's dream, aren't you? It's like, hey, we got a whole bunch of old stock that we need to shift. Let's give out some crappy-looking free hat, and we know there'll be people that will just log on and lap that stuff up. And when they look in their when the marketers and the advertising guys pull together their target person, like one of those e-fits of kind of like a criminal, it paints a picture of you, Brian.
First of all, I make this hat look good.
We're going to have to get a picture of you in your hat because I just can't look at my screen right now. Right, let's get on with... We're light on content, which as everyone can tell, we're padding the first 5 minutes of the show about your hat. So this week it will be a light one. We're in the barren run of no race week for what feels like forever now.
But the good news is we have a lot on the horizon, not just races, guests and other things. So stay tuned. To this weekend.
Save that for the next week. Oh my gosh, you got a free hat and you've just kind of gone all random on me. So
it's got like a nice rubber thing on the
Did we press
logo?
Record yet? Maybe we should just stop and start this all over again.
Hey, did you hear that Mattia Binotto is out at Ferrari?
Right, well stop it. Let's stick to the format. So
yeah,
just
I'm doing it.
Stop. Right.
Great.
Okay. News and social is what we're going to hit today. We've got.
Did you hear about Binotto?
Oh my gosh.
At Ferrari.
Have you been drinking with your special hat on? I'll try to say what's coming up today, and you just want to dive straight into news and social. This is. If this is going to be a sign of things to come over the off season, we might have to really decide if we're going to record any more of these. Okay, so coming up. Ladies and gentlemen, I do have a suspicion that Brian has been hitting the liquor before we've started tonight's show. So
not as far as you're aware.
Here we go. Right. News and social. We will cover what we didn't get through last week because there wasn't a huge amount, and also we had Rob and Paul on, so we wanted to kind of really spend the time doing the season review. So there's a little bit of leftover from last week. Brian, bless him, has plumbed the depths of the internet, and we've got quite a lot, actually, that we've got on here to go through. And then we've got Josh, 100 Seconds of DRS guest, and then we will give some teaser trailers that Brian's already let the cat out of the bag about things that might be coming during the rest of the off-season. So, Brian, would you like to kick us off with news and social? Anything
Why
you
did they
heard?
say let the cat out of the bag? Who puts cats in bags? Anyway, Mattia Binotto out at Ferrari, his resignation coming in. He'll be out at the end of the year. It was mentioned on this podcast last week and actually a couple times on Twitter by people I respect. It's a really good point. He's kind of the fall guy, right? I mean, the next person comes in. If they don't make changes to the team under them, it's effectively like firing the manager of a sports club, keeping the same players and hoping for a new result. So anyhow,
but Rob, then to me, that's exactly what the team principal should be doing, right?
Yes.
But
do they have the authority to do it?
Well, I mean, people saying he's the fall guy. Yes, because it's on his watch. He is the team principal.
But not everybody has the authority to make the wholesale changes they may want to do in real life. I mean, not just in sports, but in corporate America, we all know that's how it works too, and corporate Europe as well.
Cool.
So,
no, I mean, I just look at it and think like. I'm sure he had the ability to overrule things that were coming through from the strategy or decide they weren't going to do that, right? So to just sort of say, well, it wasn't his fault because it was this chief strategist that had to do it. Well, it still has to come in through him. I was listening to a friend of the show, Nate Saunders, on the podcast he's on, the Padhock. And by the way, he does a phenomenal impression of Toto Wolff. And he basically said, you can't imagine that. So if on the Mercedes wall they come through and say, "Hey, we've got this great idea. We're going to do a 3,000 stop race because we think it'll be the fastest." Toto isn't going to let that fly. Right. He's going to veto it and say, "Oh, what have you been drinking? Go and try again." So, do I feel a little bit sorry for Binotto? Yeah, there was. I think it was WTF1 put a graphic out of like the team principals. Actually, it might not have been them, but who cares? All the team principals that have been at the three lead teams since 2010. So Red Bull is just like 12 pictures down the years of Christian Horner. Mercedes is basically Brawn for a bit and then Toto. Ferrari, almost in 12 years, it's almost 12 different principals. It's not that bad, but they don't have any consistency. They get twitchy, they sack people, and to your point, whoever comes in next has to be able to do more than just rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic.
Agreed. Totally agree. And you seem to love this Ross Brawn rumor. It's all rumors.
Oh, it's been killed now this week.
It has. He came out and said, "I want to sit on my sofa," and he's like, "I'm out." But I keep hearing the Fred Vasseur, and we heard last week that Paul was giving Fred grief, saying, "Are you going to be at Ferrari next year?" So I think if I were putting money on it, I'd put more money on Vasseur than Brawn. But
me too. All I would just say is that Paul, going back and listening to it, Paul actually completely swerved our question when we said to him, "You know Ross, any sort of truth in the rumor that he might be back in there." He went off on some kind of he managed to completely change the track and answer a completely different question, which was genius of him. We completely missed it, and I thought, yeah, he doesn't want to let on that he knows something.
We were totally distracted.
Yeah. So probably not Ross. He's going to go fishing next year instead and just watch the Grand Prix on his phone. But it would be cool if he came back, because actually he probably would be one of the sorts of people that could shake things up. Talking of shaking up, the schedule is already getting a little bit of a shake up for next year, so we kind of know that China's not going to happen. And I saw today that Portugal's
darn it, I was hoping you didn't see that. I saw it too from a few different places.
I've got my finger on the F1 pulse. Come on.
You got a finger on a pulse. I was hoping to see if you didn't see, but yeah, Portimao, that'd be great. I read it, and as I'm seeing it said, I'm like, yes, that'd be great. It's a great track.
It is.
It's. I don't know why it's not on the calendar. I mean, if Paul Ricard could hang on the calendar for all those years, we can get Portimao on more often. I'd love to go to the Algarve, as the area is known. It looks beautiful.
We would volunteer to do a podcast or some kind of coverage for anybody that would be willing to put us on a plane and send us there, to be honest.
Better yet, we should just figure out how to apply for press credentials, and then, we need sponsorship, don't we?
Can you imagine us going for press credentials? They kind of look at it, and we just go to the bottom of a pile that would kind of...
I'll wear my Haas hat. We're fine.
Just send a picture in of you in a selfie in your Haas hat and your Dirty Side t-shirt. That'll get us in.
Yeah, no doubt. The other big rumor flying around that it seems like is not quite yet announced, but will be, it seems like, is Mick, as I wear my Haas hat, to Mercedes as a reserve driver. Toto seemed high on the idea early on, and it has not been announced, but Rob, as we all know, is just secretly waiting for Mick to go to Mercedes, Lewis to eventually retire, George to become number one, and Mick to become number two. That is the Rob J. Vale
I put that on the Discord
dream.
like months, not months ago, that's a little bit over ambitious, maybe weeks ago at least. I put that on there saying, bringing together the famous racer name Schumacher with the famous German race car of Mercedes. It's a match made in heaven. Mercedes would be stupid not to. There they go. They've got the future driver lineup. And now, what I also thought was, so Lewis wins the championship next year, retires with his eighth, and off he goes into the sunset to wear big baggy clothing and look hilarious. And George takes over as number one. In comes Mick. Opening race of the season, he's lapping Magnussen, and he does the Danny Rick finger guns as he goes past the Haas team.
I love it. By the way, don't bag on Lewis. There was a picture of him this week with a fan. She was an 11 out of 10 fan. Fantasy news, Red Bolino, Balotelli 21. We mentioned you 2 weeks ago when we wrapped up the fantasy season. If you missed the episode, you have a t-shirt waiting, but we don't know where to send it. So reach out to us on Twitter at F1DirtySide. Our DMs are always open, especially for Lewis's fan. And so then, in addition, some news that came out today, that we're recording this on Thursday night as I have a crazy weekend. This actually made me mad. And I recognize it's super early and also kind of just news, but for 2026 and the new regs that'll come then, there are stories that Formula One is considering using the aero situation to slow down the leaders, sort of a reverse DRS, what I would call, as an old man, computer assistance on a video game. And this pissed me off to no end. I read like 14 articles about it. It is a real consideration. I don't think it'll come to fruition.
It's not, is it?
It can't.
It's
It cannot.
but it's clickbait. When you actually look and read through what they're at, so the actual discussion is all about the use of active aero, right? They want to be able to bring out active aero, which I kind of would be pretty cool. So for anybody that's not familiar with the idea of active aero, they kind of already said DRS is kind of active aero because it allows the aerodynamics of the car to dynamically shift in the race. And what they're saying is the new regs in 2026 would allow you to maybe have whether it be driver controlled, I don't know, but essentially one set of aero for when you are flying down the straights and you don't need any downforce and you want to go as fast as you can, and then as you come careening up to the hairpin, then your active aero kicks in and sets a different set of wing settings, etc., so that you've now got optimal aero for going around corners fast. So that kind of sounds really cool, but it's not that clickbaity, it's not that sensational. And what seems to have happened is they've kind of said, oh yeah, there could be other uses for it, and one of the things we could look into is, and as you read this article, it's more like there was a lot of leading of the witness, of the journalists asking, what else could you use it for? Could you contemplate this? And I think it was it Braun that was covering it, or was it Toto? Who was it that was being interviewed about it? And they kind of said, yeah, it's something we could look at. That in the same way that DRS can enhance, you could have kind of the opposite effect as well. And everyone just seems to have jumped on that quote and turned it into the end of the world is coming, we're going to slow down the leader. And I'm like, I didn't see that from the actual source article. It's just everyone else wants clickbait.
Well, let's hope you're right, because at the end of the day, this is a sport, not entertainment. Sports are entertainment, but in entertainment value, it doesn't matter who wins. And in sports, it does matter. So to me, I read the clickbait part, and I got pissed that anyone would even consider that. That would be, in my humble estimation, just
It's a mistake.
So
I know, I agree. And I think if you look at what they're doing, the way they try to bunch the field up is to keep changing the regs, bring in the cost cap, so that what you hope to do is stop letting the leading cars disappear into the distance innovation-wise and allow the dunces at the back to close the gap. And that's how we all want to see it done, right? And the active aero kind of worries me, because I just see that someone like a Mercedes or a Red Bull is going to get that like super nailed, and now they're going to have a car. Some of the best things we have right now is a car that is great on the straights, but then it allows the other teams to catch them up where we get the twisty turny bits. And I like that disparity of you can't always get a car perfectly set up for a track. So if active aero could negate that a bit, I actually think forget reverse DRS, just allowing active aero could make the whole field further apart anyway.
So one last tangent on this, and then we'll move on, I promise. There were a few people on Twitter who had a really good idea, and I don't have the handles here, so apologies, but obviously credit to them, not to me. And the question was, could you use a certain amount of DRS button presses in a race? Meaning, stop hindering anybody. Don't hinder anyone. But what if you limited the DRS uses to each competitor? You don't have to be within a second. You just hit the button. And it's very like... and they didn't say this, but this is my interpretation. I watched a little bit of IndyCar, the push to pass, which is effectively it juices your batteries, juices your engine, and gets you around cars. You only have a certain amount of time of that. So could you imagine a world where, and I actually don't hate this idea, where you have a certain amount of DRS buttons you can use, and let's say there are 2 straights and 50 laps, that's 100 times if you were close. They gave every car 60. And you have 60 DRS buttons to use regardless of how close you are. You could use it to defend, to attack, just to pull ahead. I would prefer that over this garbage clickbait idea that was floated, which is still fake. I agree with you, but anyway, whatever. So moving on to what I thought was a very cool piece of news recently that I don't think got enough attention. Andretti's NXT Next lineup for IndyCar has signed W Series 3-time champion, I believe, Jamie Chadwick, for the 2023 season. She's the first full-time woman driver in the IndyCar feeder series in 13 years. Awesome. I love this. I love this. I love this. I can't wait to see what she can do there. I don't know if she'll pull a Jim Clark and go, across the pond every week and kind of do her thing in both series. either in the W Series or in the Formula One feeder series or in the IndyCar Next. But Jamie Chadwick has game. Let's see what she can do in anything, in any car.
Agree.
I just can't wait to see what she does. So I'm excited. And then we move on to videos. And because last week we were so full of guests, we have a handful here. Rob, do you mind if I plunge into a few of these?
You go for it. I did scan down, and I am pretty disappointed that there's no Hilton videos in here. So
don't worry, I'm going overseas in a couple weeks. I'll get some new Hilton videos from the Middle East here shortly. So a mediocre video, one that I usually really like, the 2022 driver season predictions recap. So it's on the Formula One channel. They do these every year, and they have the drivers write down what they think will happen at the end of the year, and then they reopen the envelopes and like, oh, I was right, I was wrong. Like last year, Kimi had the best. I mean, I miss Kimi. I miss those kind of perspectives. This year, they had the right characters, but it was sort of boring. So feel free to check it out, but I wouldn't bet a great evening on it. However, though, Formula One did have another video that I thought was epic. And yes, I am a bit of a Danny Rick fan, but they had the ultimate Daniel Ricciardo overtakes compilation. Oh, it was so good. And it felt like every other one, like they were flipping back and forth through the years, and then you were back at Monza so often. But anyway, he will be so missed on the grid, not just by fans of his personality, not just by Drive to Survive people. Go watch this video. It is so, so good. And we will miss him. We're going to miss him. We're going to miss Seb. We're going to miss Gotifi going off in Japan. And we're going to miss Mick because of my hat. But Rob, in all seriousness, what's your favorite Mick on-track memory now that we're losing him, at least for 2023?
I think when he got his first points.
Yeah?
I was like...
His whole family was excited. Sister and everybody.
Yeah, that was just superb to watch. What I was actually trying to think of while you were going through that is we still need to come up with your you've got to get a rating system for these videos. What was it? Send it and friend it. That was
like
trash,
the stamp and send it. And,
yeah,
I don't know.
But anyway, next
All
one.
Right. Couple more from the WTF1 channel. Matt does great videos, and he had two with Charles in Abu Dhabi. The first one is sort of a short. It's called Can Charles Leclerc Guess the Corner Without Seeing It? So what it is it's only 5 minutes. It's basically Charles driving around Abu Dhabi twice, describing the lap on a video game, which is really pretty cool. Like, check it out. You will learn about the Abu Dhabi course. And then they blindfold him, and they play 2 or 3 corners of driving with him blindfolded to see if he can notice the corner by sound of someone else driving it on a video game. And you know what? Spoiler alert, he can. He's that good. So anyway, check it out. That is a good one. And then there's a slightly longer one where it's called the Forfeit Challenge. And I'm not going to give away the stakes or what happens, but basically Maddie and Charles are doing hot laps, one against the other, over 5 hot laps. So you wins each of those 5. The winner forces the other into a forfeit, as the Brits call it, because Rob called it that when I made him lose the World Cup. I call it a penalty here in the States. But anyway, check it out. It's not the greatest. They kind of had to abort it at one point. But anyway, one other one that I would recommend very highly, the Pierre and Yuki AlphaTauri personal stylists for the day. This is on both the F1 channel and the AlphaTauri channel. And it's with Will Buxton and Lawrence Barretto. They get dressed up by Pierre and Yuki. So it is exactly as you'd hoped. These are 2 guys, I'm talking about the drivers, Pierre and Yuki, #Pukey, who have great personality. And I'm going to miss this team, this duo, this pairing. I think I've said that a couple times. Just, they're fun to watch. They get along swimmingly. They needle each other, but they still have fun. Great video. Definitely go check it out. It's a little long. But I would say, honestly, that Lawrence and Will are the downside of this video, which is hard to believe. But it's really good. And then the last one, which is if you're just feeling nostalgic, the head-to-head Mr. and Mr. Challenge on the Williams channel. The last Williams video with both Alex and Nikki. And it's kind of like the most likely to, and they'll throw something out. Run the fastest 100 meters or forget their keys at the, if going to the airport kind of thing. And it's fine. It's good. It's fun.
It's fine. That's a resounding seal of approval.
It's the middle. Whatever the middle is. Send it and friend it, and it's fine. But anyway, that was the last one I had, and just it was an okay video. And as I close this segment, I would be remiss if I didn't thank my friend and our DRS guest, Garth, for acknowledging our 50th episode a couple weeks ago with some swimmingly beautiful, amazingly cookies. So Garth, thanks, bro. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, they were great. That was superb to receive those in the mail. I always like it when you get gifts like that where you weren't expecting. So I'm not going to give my address out on air here, but if people want to get in touch to send us free stuff, that'd be great.
Yeah, just reach out to me. I'll give you Rob's address. No worries.
I realised at the beginning, it wasn't just news and social, is it? We've actually got... fresh from licking his wounds for not being able to reply to Paul with the stat question last week, Brian has gone into overdrive, and we're going to hit one other little thing that came up around drivers' salaries, but then we're going to launch into Sap-Stats season review edition. So, I don't know which music you've picked and how you're going to say it, but that's coming up after we just look at this one last little piece, which we were deciding whether we were going to go through this. Like, we're not going to name every driver and everything, but essentially the salaries and bonuses got leaked. Brian did some hacking online. He was able to get into the supercomputer and pull this information down for us.
And by that, I mean I found it on Forbes. Thank you, Brett Knight, who wrote an article and did his own work. So Brett Knight, shout out, Rob Reed's colleague at Forbes. But anyway, keep going, Rob.
Well, now you ruined the whole War Games thing here. I was,
I mean, it was this Womp. What is that called? Whopper? You know what I'm talking about?
So, and looking at it, you think, well, okay, so Max up at the top, earned 60 million this year, apparently 40 million salary, 20 bonuses, and you're like, okay, there's not going to be much in here. But we were kind of looking at it beforehand, and we were like, well, the one thing that stood out to me is Sergio in car number 2 over at Red Bull, less than half the earnings of Max. So 26 million, 10 salary, 16 bonus. I can get that, number 2 driver. When we go and look over the fence at old Mercedes, the disparity between the 2 drivers, why don't you take us through the Mercedes stats, Brian?
According to Forbes, Lewis with $55 million, no bonus, because when you're a 7-time champion, apparently you don't need any incentive. But George, as you mentioned, 10 million total, 3 million salary, 7 bonus. Now, I'm not one to shake a bad eye at $10 million. If someone wanted to pay me that, I'd take it.
You're not going to shake a what?
I don't know. I ran out of brain power. $3 million salary, which is great. But again, if these are true, and if it's 3 million salary, 7 million bonus, $10 million, he's still making a fraction of Lewis's $55 million. And need I remind people, Lewis finished behind George this year.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's where his 7 million bonus comes from. Beating Lewis, 7 million tick.
That's not enough. I mean, I recognize Lewis.
No, but I mean, if he hadn't beaten Lewis, if he hadn't beaten Lewis and got his 7 million bonus for beating Lewis, he'd have only got 3 million. I don't even know what I'd do if I had to live on just 3 million in a year.
And again, I've already said I love Danny Rick. $15 million salary and $2 million bonus, and we know his buyout was publicly announced this summer at around $21 million. Damn, that's a lot of money, because Lando was at $5 million salary, $6 million bonus, and I'd argue, as I did last week, that he is the best non-top 3 team driver and will beat some of those guys next year in the Drivers' Championship. 11 million total. He's way behind Danny Rick. So anyway, it was just confusing to me to see all of these salaries.
Yeah, but kind of interesting just to see that. I mean, obviously they all know. I mean, it's not like they're going to George is going to have been sat there reading Forbes and just kind of.
Well, you never know. I mean,
well, you never know.
He doesn't know exactly where he stands.
Right. I think it's time, Brian. So I don't know which music you're going to pick to use this for, but it's over to you for introducing us. Introduce? Yeah.
I can't talk. You're going to try talking? Good luck.
Yeah, I'm not going to try talking either, because I don't deserve to be anywhere near Sap-Stats, because that's all you.
Sap-Stats, end of the season. I used this jingle way before I saw it in the Mexico Grand Prix edition. All right. So as we already said, last week on this here pokey little podcast, there were 2 first-time winners, right? We had Carlos and George. We had 4 first-time pole sitters, which is the most in a long time. Carlos with 3, Checo, George, and K-Mag. Okay, we talked a little bit about this, but I want to be abundantly clear. We set 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the sixth all-time worst pole to win ratio with Ferrari this year, which I mentioned the stats, but I didn't know how bad it was till I did the research. So Ferrari had 12 poles, and they only had 4 wins. Only. I mean, 4 is great, but out of 12 poles, it is 33.3% for you mathematicians out there, which puts them the third worst pole to win ratio ever. And the other teams were from 2002, 79, 84, 86, and 74. So it's been a while since someone has been this bad at converting poles to wins. And I found that shocking.
Sixth worst, not third worst.
Sixth. Did I say third?
You did, but I mean, who am I to pick you up on every little mistake you make?
Right. So sixth worst. So I thought that was kind of startling that in all-time Formula One statistics, as long as you had, this is for at least 5 poles, so if you had 4 and whatever, but at least 5 poles or more where it matters. Wow. I mean, that actually shows it's not just a bad year. That's an epically bad year.
Yeah, and when I look at this graph here, the number of wins they obviously got is pretty good, because I think you look at the worst up at the top of the leaderboard. 2002 Williams, 7 poles resulted in just 1 solitary win. So the 4 wins, like you say, is good. If only it hadn't have had to need 12 poles to get there. But yeah, can I steal one? And can I go to the next one?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So we were on about at the beginning, go back a year now when we first started this pod, and we had all those filler episodes before the season started. One of them, we were looking at the new regs, and we hoped and prayed that the following was going to be easier and we were going to see more overtakes. Well, 31% increase in overtakes since last season. So 2021, 599 overtakes. One more overtake and it would have been a nice 600. Anyway, 2022...
Don't let your OCD get in the way.
I know. 2022, 785 overtakes. So that's good news for me. That is good news. Now, I think this is counted... I've got a spreadsheet of overtakes that I've got to dive into. I'm a nerd, and the way they calculate these, a lot of is an overtake on the first lap for some reason doesn't count.
Right.
And overtakes for blue flags don't count, and overtakes when you overtake someone who's pitting doesn't count. So these are legitimate increase in racing overtakes. This isn't because the way the rain or any of that kind of stuff panned out. So I think this is pretty good statistic to say, yes, we've seen more overtakes this year.
Someone should tell Checo that overtakes under the yellow flags and safety car at Imola don't count either, if you remember from last year when he did that in the back. Anyway, I'm too much of a nerd. So, yeah, I thought that was great. I thought that was a great stat, Rob. Thanks for covering that. And then also, let's talk a little bit about difference year over year in terms of team points. So, constructor points. And as you'd expect, Red Bull is up because of their domination this year. Ferrari is up significantly, 167 more points year over year. That's great. And these are sort of not including sprints, so it's more equal to equal. Ferrari's up the most. But what I wanted to highlight is Alfa Romeo up 40, and we touched on this a little last week. Obviously, Valtteri has been a humongous impact for them. Brought them home 6th in the constructor because of his 5th place at Imola. But Haas also up 33 points. Those are the biggest gainers of the year, and you'd probably guess Mercedes, unfortunately, is one of the largest fallers. However, the two around them, with significant point differences on the negative year over year, were it made sense, but I just didn't guess it. McLaren with the worst point differential year over year, and AlphaTauri right behind him. Did it feel like, in retrospect, Rob, did it feel like AlphaTauri just had a horrible year? Like, Pierre did not look like Pierre. At their times, it felt like both he and Yuki were just off their game. What I don't understand. Was it the car? Was it what happened there this year?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it does feel like they just had a bit of a met year, and with a combination of, say, Lando dragging that McLaren around, because the weird thing is McLaren like being at the bottom with the biggest loss, but we know that Lando finished 7th every single race. Just basically means that loss really, unfortunately, is mainly all on Danny Rick. And then what we've also got is, because Haas and Alfa Romeo upped their game and started getting their elbows out and getting amongst the points, well, something had got to give. So, but what this graph to me shows is like Williams were up, Aston Martin were down a little bit. No, sorry, Williams were down, Aston Martin down, but not by lots. So I would have thought that I would have seen the spread almost equal across Williams, Aston Martin, AlphaTauri, Mercedes, and McLaren, because in my head, I would have said they were always trading places. They kind of Williams weren't last every single time, and Aston were kind of there sometimes and down again. So to see that like this, and see that AlphaTauri, that is, and McLaren were that bad. Unless they just had a stellar season last season, they could never live up to it again. Maybe it was that, but
AlphaTauri did go down 3 positions. They were the largest faller in the constructors year over year. They went from 6th to 9th. Williams was tied with Mercedes, both falling down 2 positions. Now Mercedes went from 1st to 3rd, so it's not as though they, fell all the way down the tree and hit all the branches. However, Williams went from 8th to 10th. So a bad year for Williams, bad kind of approach. It'll be interesting, honestly. I'm very excited to see what Alex can do and what Logan Sargent can do, and hopefully Williams can kind of redo that car. But the biggest gainers in position-wise, the largest is Alfa Romeo, which is amazing. So from 9th to 6th, we've already credited why. They have obviously Valtteri, who's tremendous, and a really good-looking rookie in Zhou. So I'm curious if they can get that reliability tuned up for next year. What can they do?
Well, especially when you then look at your next one that you've got on here, when you split the season in half and look at first half versus second half.
Yeah.
So Alfa have gone and secured 6th position in the constructors by essentially getting all of their points in the first half of the season.
Yes.
51 of their 55 they got round 1 through 11. They
that
brought
is
home
insane.
4 points. Imagine if they could have just had a smattering of what they'd achieved in the first half and the second half. They could have been shooting for even higher. That was the one that really caught my eye as I looked down this, because most teams are kind of like split down the middle. Haas, as we've covered as well, they're a bit like Alfa Romeo, where things
not
just
a bit. It's almost the same, not in terms of nominal, but in terms of relative. Haas was down 92% of the points in the second half of the year from first half. Alfa Romeo's down 92, Haas down 91.
Yeah.
So you and I had this debate many times, very similar in terms of relative amount, but of course, Alfa more so nominally.
Yeah, so that was when you kind of see it like that, you think, well, what did go wrong? What did they start putting development to next year because they just thought they couldn't do anything with it? I don't know. But we've commented on it multiple times that both teams sort of fell off a cliff a little bit.
Yep.
But
and what I thought was interesting was the highest gainer was Aston Martin. And we talked a lot about Lance's continual 10th, but Seb was always flirting around with more points, sometimes more, sometimes out. They went from 18 in the first half, the first 11 rounds, to 37. So they did figure out some things at Aston Martin in the second half of 2022.
They had their little fancy roll-top rear wing. That's what it was.
Which is now illegal, by the way.
Yeah, just crush Aston there. Like, come up with a bit of innovation. Nope, not having any of that.
Totally. Williams, by the way, went up 67% from 3 to 5. Now, sorry, I don't mean to laugh. I'm wearing a Haas hat. Anyway, so as we all know, at the end of every race, there are a handful of media areas that rate the drivers on each week. And what I thought was fascinating was if you average them through the entirety of the year, and this stat I got from @F1_charts, so shout out. You can actually see kind of where, the average performance of the driver over the year as given by 4 or 5 different media venues. So I'd like to hold out Nick DeVries, or Debris, as Carlos Sainz would call him, and hold him out because he had one race and he was great and he got a good score and he would technically be first, but that's ridiculous because it's a sample set of 1, and everyone's like, well, he's driving Gotifi's car and he didn't fail, so he gets a 9.6. Give me a break. But so, as you might expect, the world champion 2 times over, Max Verstappen, is first. However, Rob, who's second?
Charles.
Yeah, which you'd expect, right? But is Sergio third?
No.
Who's third?
Yeah, I was looking at this. It's almost the Drivers' Championship, right? There's a couple of Sopparunas in there.
Exactly.
So and I wasn't expecting Sergio to be so far down, actually.
I wasn't either, but George is third, even though he's the 10th highest paid. Come on now. Pay the man some money.
He's going to have that in his contract for next year. I want my bonus based on how high up the media rating scale I am.
Why not? I mean, he is. George! Let's pay that man. Anyway, so sorry, just looking at the media stuff, George was ahead of Lewis, but Lewis was next. Fernando, Sergio now in 7th, although again I'd remove Nick Debris from this score. And then here's where I thought the person who deserved it most, in 8th, Lando Norris, who, if you take out Nick, is 7th, which is perfect for Lando.
Of course, where else would he be?
Yeah. I didn't see a lot of other things. I mean, Valtteri was 13th. I thought that was a little low, if I'm being honest, given what he dragged around the track for most of the season. But I don't know. Do you see anything else on there, Rob, that stood out?
Just that it took me a while to find Carlo on the list. You get into 9th, and it's like...
Oh, it's low.
It's low, but yeah. And then when you come on to our next stat, when we kind of look at like the sharing of the points, it doesn't really tally up with the media's view of how everybody got on, because when we look at Ferrari, it's almost a 50-50. It's 56% of the points went to Leclerc and 44 to Sainz. So they basically shared the love there of pretty even.
Third most even.
Yeah. Third most even. What a title that is to win. And the winner of the most... So silver medal in the most even award was Russell and Hamilton with
We
Russell
sound very American right now. Hey,
I know.
the 11th finisher in the soccer tournament this year who gets a trophy and a ribbon. Brian's daughter. Anyway, so but what do you... I would ask you, if you closed your eyes for a second and didn't see the stat, what do you think was the most uneven driver pairing this year in terms of points?
Uneven. Whether we haven't given the winner out for the most even, we did third and second.
Well, let's
leave
go to the
people
top.
hanging.
No, we're coming back. The most uneven driver pairing of the year was I would have thought, honestly, I would have said Lando. I would have said Lando and Danny just because
I would have as well.
Yeah, the publicity it got and Danny's struggles. He still had 37 points and he had 23% of the points. They were second. The number one most uneven driver pairing in terms of points this year from therace.com stat is Valtteri. He had 89% of the Alfa Romeo points. Zhou had 11% of it. And again, I don't put it at Zhou's doorstep. I mean, the car was unreliable. He had a lot of DNFs. He had a lot of challenges with that vehicle. He had a terrible crash when George came across and hit him. So I expect it to be more even next year, but bringing a guy like Valtteri, who is epically good, into a team like Alfa Romeo, that's what happens. You get a guy who gets 89% of the points.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, looking at this now, our most even is actually tied, which I hadn't actually looked at because I looked at the points total split, not the percentage split. So Mercedes was second with the 53 and 47 between Russell and Hamilton, and Alpine were also 53-47 split. But actually, for some reason, in my head, Alonso scored more points than Ocon this year, which I was completely wrong at when I looked at this. I was like, they must have got the graph the wrong way around here. But no, that's truth.
I saw a comment recently that said, if Pierre walks into Alpine and outpoints Ocon significantly, does Alonso have to retire? He's never retiring. Fernando's going to leave every team in shambles and on fire, just like we thought he would, and then he thought he wouldn't, and then he did. A stat that I found pretty fascinating was the people who have come from the furthest position back on the grid this year to win. And I already mentioned a couple of these last week, but just to hit them again, the longest grid to finishing position victory this season was Max in Belgium. He went from 14th to win. The second closest to that, or furthest, I should say, from the win was Max again, Hungary, 10th to win. And you may say, well, yeah, but those might be flukes. What's third? It's Max again from 7th in Monza to win.
Okay, we'll get rid of the three anomalies. Who's fourth?
Max, again, Saudi Arabia early in the season from 4th. And then everyone else was within the third. And I would say, third to first. And those people are, just so we can name them, Max, again in Miami, Checo in Monaco, if you remember. But that was that rain debacle, and maybe he crashed in qualifying now. Who knows? Max's mom might ask. And then Max in Azerbaijan, and that's it from the third position. So basically, Max dominated the season, and another stat to prove it is who finished from the furthest grid position to victory, and he has almost every single one of those records. So he can win from the front, he can win from the back, it doesn't matter. The guy is amazing. No?
Yeah, so why will the anti-DRS thing be a bad idea? Now I'm going back to that now all of a sudden.
No, don't do that. Yeah.
We're nearly there. We were almost at the end of the bumper Sap-Stats edition, so...
Just a couple last things, right? So as we mentioned very briefly last week, but not a focus, the only driver out of the top 3 teams to make the podium this season was Lando at Imola. He finished 3rd. So basically, this is actually the one downside stat of the whole year, in all seriousness. If you weren't at Red Bull, Ferrari, or Mercedes, the only time, one time, someone finished on a podium in the top 3, one time was Lando at Imola. That is not a good stat. I remember the years recently when we'd have a young Charles or Pierre. Monza has always brought us new guys. We had Esteban. We've had Checo when he was with Racing Point. We had none of that this year. We had one guy make a podium. It was 3rd, and it was Lando, who's amazing, at McLaren, who was terrible. So, to me, yes, there were more overtakes, and yes, there were a lot more battling, but the tiers were much more sort of segregated. And to make that top 3, it was impossible this year for anyone other than those teams. I don't know. It just bothered me when you think about it.
Yeah, and I hope it will just be a matter of, I think Lee on the Discord has said a number of times, or maybe on Twitter, and JP as well, is the whole new regs always unsettle things in the first year that they kick in, and some teams get it right, some teams don't. Next year, I'm just going to be the eternal optimist. The others kind of close that up again, and we get to see kind of the... I don't know, Valtteri on the top spot, or, some kind of weird, and yes, I know sometimes it needs rain or some retirements or some big crash, but I don't care. I want to see someone else up there, and that's not anything derogatory against the top 3 teams. I just like to see the order mixed up every now and again. So I'm with you on that one. Now, onto kind of the last main block of stats, I guess, which is the retirements that we saw this year. The one that actually caught my eye straight away. I mean, if you'd have blindfolded me, not told me anything about this, and said who retired the most from accidents, I mean,
Latifi.
Latifi has to be right up there, but I didn't realize he'd be tied at the top.
I did. I would have thought this. No, Carlos.
I don't know.
How many times did he end up in the gravel? I think I made a gravel meme in Monaco. There's no gravel, he'll be okay, because he'd had 2 in a row at that point.
Yeah, but this one's accidents, isn't it? This isn't.
Yeah, but you go into the gravel. That's an accident.
But sorry, I would have said I thought Sainz had a few DNFs, but say when his car had the external combustion engine, that wasn't an accident, right? That was
he only had 2 of those.
That doesn't.
Counts?
So he had 6. He had 6 DNFs then, did he?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, I thought he had more technical DNFs than accidents. So
no, he had 4. Whether he was hit because one of those he got hit by Danny Rick, pushed into the gravel, and then he floored it and beached his car. But he had 4 accident DNFs, and then he still had 2 technical DNFs with Austria, the external combustion engine, and I think Azerbaijan when his hydraulics, they said at the time, although everyone's engine was letting go for Ferrari that time. So,
but when 2 of the
DNFs,
and when 2 of the top 3 on this list are Williams, you got problems
for the accidents. Yeah,
for accidents. Right? But then the one that really surprised me, because obviously the guy's lost his seat because he crashes too many times and he's too expensive. The team is poor old Mick, because he's a hazard because he crashes and costs the team money. But Mag is next. K-Mag's next on the list with 3 accidents. He actually had more accidents than Mick. I'm like, okay, how does that work?
So they were bigger? I don't know.
Yeah. So that was quite interesting to see kind of the breakdown of the accidents. You got the technical stuff.
Well, technical retirements actually did not surprise me as much. So, I felt to me at least, Fernando had a lot of retirements.
Yeah.
I mean, you remember even in quali he had some challenges, and in the race he had gearbox and then engine problems. Cost me my bet that time in Singapore. So, Fernando led in technical retirements with 5 at Alpine. However, what I found really fascinating is the next 2 are teammates. Valtteri and Zhou at Alfa Romeo, 4 apiece.
Yeah.
8 technical retirements for Alfa. Holy cow. If they can get reliability sorted, maybe they won't have that drop-off in the second half of points next year, because that's a lot of retirements.
When you look at there's a lot of Ferrari running engines up there that are in the technical DNF,
great point.
So, Yeah. So right, okay.
Let's close the year looking at two stats, two last ones. So now that we lose Seb and we lose Danny Rick off the grid, next year Lewis is by far the leading race winner with 103 wins. However, if you put all of the rest of the grid together, they have 90 wins, including Max. So Lewis now has more wins than all 19 other drivers, which is fascinating. And that's Max and Fernando and of course, Logan Sargent. And so when you look at that, the other one that Lee sent in on the Discord, Lee, thank you very much. It's been 31 years or 11,340 days since the last F1 season ended without one of these two drivers winning a race. Lewis Hamilton, Michael Schumacher. It's been 31 years since one of those two guys hasn't won a race. 1991. That's an insane stat. You can go 31 years, and in each of those years you had Lewis or Schumacher, not Mick, but Michael, winning a race, and this year we didn't.
I know. I thought we were going to in Brazil, but it didn't quite pan out that way. I still hold true that he's going to become the first 300 club member to win a race, because I think Mercedes is going to carry on the upwards momentum from this year, and I think he can score a win next year.
Totally agree.
Yes!
I think you're right. I think it's happening. They've improved so much that by the end of the year, if he doesn't by Brazil, I'll bet again. I'll put more money into the betting account, and I'll have some Interlagos money on Lewis to win, because I don't know how he won't.
Talking of betting, and completely changing subject and sports, I'm just a big shout out to the Japanese team in the World Cup today. Not only did they pull a massive shock by beating Spain and have progressed through to the next round that no one thought, everyone had Spain and Belgium nailed on to get out of this group. Because this World Cup has been throwing up some strange little things, I put money on Japan to beat Spain. So thank you to the nation of Japan.
And since we're recording this Thursday, and this won't make sense on Sunday when we drop it, still, JP, the U.S. plays the Netherlands on Saturday, which is in the past when you listen to this, but in the future when we record this, I'm reaching out in Discord, my man, and we're putting a bet on the teams.
Ooh, you're feeling really kind of bullish now, aren't you? Because
I can't win crap when it comes to F1, but I'm undefeated in the World Cup.
Undefeated. I'd love to just put you through some kind of like football quiz. I think it'd be hilarious. Because
ask me. I don't know anything about it. I almost sweared. I don't know anything about anything. You got the line in the middle, which doesn't matter after the kickoff or whatever it's called, and then the amount of time, who knows how long that goes, and there's a box and some goalies who wear big gloves, and everyone falls down and cries.
In which sport does the line in the middle matter?
Hockey?
What does it do? The blue lines are for offside. The halfway line does nothing in hockey after you've had the face-off at the beginning.
Basketball?
What does that do after you started?
Yes, basketball does matter. You have to get across it in 10 seconds. Now 8.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
bang.
wow.
Saved it from the fire. Okay. Anyway, we have a great DRS guest. Let's talk about it, Rob.
Well, we do, and you're going to hear when we sat down to speak to Josh. What you're not going to hear is the bit that I'm going to edit out, which is maybe I will edit in afterwards after we listen to Josh. Maybe I'll drop my original intro to the DRS segment, because I proved once and for all that I cannot multitask. I had a window open. I was checking World Cup scores. Brian handed it over to me to do the DRS intro, and I completely ballsed it up, is the technical term that we would use in the UK. So we held it together. We had a good time.
Great success.
So I apologise, Josh, for ruining your first attempt at joining us on 100 Seconds of DRS, but let's take a listen in now to see how you actually got on. Okay, so we have Josh joining us here on 100 Seconds of DRS this week. Josh is a coach of my kids, for swimming, but in his spare time, he likes to keep an eye on all things Formula One. So welcome to the dirty side of the track, Josh.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
This is super cool you're here. So I'm going to ask the first question, even though you know Rob. And the question is, do you find Rob as annoying as I do?
No. He's always a great conversation on the deck. He certainly helps out a lot. swim meet wise. Running, he always likes to talk about how he's got great thumbs for timing.
Best thumbs, best thumbs.
At the last Connecticut swimming banquet, he was over there saying, "How come there's not a timer award? I would have won, hands down."
I am still a little bit annoyed about that. You know, they give all these awards for like the kids in the pool doing the swimming. Okay, I kind of get that, and then the officials that kind of oversee the meet, I kind of get that, but really, timers is where it's at. I mean, if you can't stop the clock, there's no event. If you don't know how fast everyone swam, then what's the point?
It is so good they've never heard you try to time the 100 seconds of DRS, because that chance of that award would be out the window.
It's because it's not a stopwatch, it's a phone. I mean, if it was a stopwatch with a thumb, I'd be right up there. I'm telling you, I'm like a legend of the sport.
That's the reason. So, Josh, back to Formula One. How did you get into F1 in your life?
Much like I've heard on the podcast before, not so much with the Netflix show, but more or less, I started out playing sort of the video game. And that sort of progressed into playing more of the Assetto Corsa, which is like the GT racing cars.
Right.
Got real into that for a couple weeks during COVID. And then I had a couple buddies that had me get on F1, the 21 version. And we played that for God knows how many hours. But yeah, no, it was great fun. And then this season I decided, hey, maybe I should probably start watching some races.
I mean, that's a great way to get into it. I think we've talked about this on the pod, but I started through video games years and years ago. I'm a little older than you, so it was a while ago. But yeah, that's awesome. That's a great way to get into it. And do you and Rob ever talk about Formula One during the swim meets, or?
Yeah, occasionally I catch him on deck. I remember over the summer he was talking about buying the steering wheel for playing the game, and I had told him I went out and bought one because he had mentioned it. And he was devastated, so then I think he actually went and got one himself.
I still haven't either, but I'm going to have to now. But yeah, and we kind of exchange, especially if Josh is kind of inconsiderate enough to book a swim meet over, say, qualification or a race. Then there's definitely some heated debates there around timing of swim meets. I really think it should be aligned more to the podcast and to the sport, but apparently not. So we keep each other updated as we're kind of passing each other on the swim deck. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. His boys are real into it. I love showing up to practice Saturday morning, and I've got Rob's son yelling, "Who's in the lead? What's the pole? What does it look like? Who's in what place? What lap are they on? What's going on?" Every time.
Is that true? That's fantastic.
Yeah, every time.
So he's done something, right?
Yeah. No, and then then he gets yelled at to keep swimming. You know, it's just how it goes.
Oh man, yeah, it's true. I just basically threaten them that I'm not going to let them live in the house if they don't watch Formula One. So it's kind of been conditioned in that way. So, okay, so you know what you're here, Josh.
Yeah.
You are here to take part in probably the most prestigious fast action quiz that is known to man. Now, I'm going to be asking the questions to you this week because Brian went last time, which does unfortunately mean that we got Brian on timing duty.
I've got the best thumbs.
Well, yeah, but what are you using, a stopwatch or a phone?
A phone, and I had to figure out how to do it again. I'm not going to lie. I was just sitting here clearing all the lap times. I'm like, I don't need laps. What the heck did I do? All right, I'm ready.
You really ready?
I am. Well, the most important is Josh ready. Josh, are you ready, my friend?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I say my friend, you're a new friend to me, but if you're a friend of Rob's, that means you're obviously better than he is. Rob, are you ready, buddy?
I am definitely ready, yeah.
All right, then 3, 2, 1, begin.
Best F1 driver on the grid currently?
Leclerc.
First poster you had on your bedroom wall?
It had to be a Ford truck poster, definitely.
Mario or Luigi?
Mario's so mainstream. I'll go Luigi.
Favorite Formula One track?
Oh man, that's tough. I'm gonna say Imola because we were talking about it. How frustrated I was getting playing the game.
If you were in the pit crew, which tyre would you change?
Driver front.
Okay. If you got a James Bond style gadget to an F1 car, what would it be?
I like the oil slick one. I think that'd be interesting.
If you were in a superhero movie, are you the hero or the villain?
It would have to depend. I think villain. I think they have more fun sometimes.
If you could add a venue to F1, where would you add it?
We're going to Vegas this next season. Maybe. Oh gosh. Why not New England? Let's throw in the weather.
In the winter, right?
Yeah.
Would you rather be chased by one horse-sized duck or 10 duck-sized horses?
I'm gonna say one horse-sized duck.
Ooh. If you could swap the cars out for other types of transportation, what would you like to see them racing in?
See, they already do the semi-trucks in that weird European series. Let's do why not mopeds? Let's keep it interesting.
Do you have any lucky superstitions?
Oh gosh. Back when I was swimming, I used to have the same pair of shorts every meet. Now they would be washed, but the same pair every meet my whole swim career.
And we have hit time. Now, were they really washed, or was this like?
Yeah, no, they were. No. I made
college
sure they were.
kids' jeans washed, which is once a semester.
No, they would. They'd get washed every meet.
All right, that was awesome.
Another question just for you on that the whole shorts thing. I mean, is there any point in washing them anyway? It's chlorine in a swimming pool. What's the point? Don't you wash them every time you swim in them, basically?
I mean, I don't know, Robin. Now I'm curious.
This is my kid's defense as to why they haven't.
I don't know.
Yeah.
No. I mean, you throw them in a bag; they're all wet. It gets moldy. You can't do that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm feeling like when the kids get home from swim meets, Rob's just like, just hang them up. They're fine.
Yeah, exactly. Just put them on a coat hanger, hang them out the window.
I mean, Rob, do you do the laundry in the house? I'm
Oh man. So when the Ford truck poster, was it what, big F-150 or just what was the poster?
It could have been. I'm trying to remember. It could have been a Ford Lightning for a long time. I loved that truck. Actually, recently, talking about the video games too, it came out on Forza, one of the new Forza games, and I remember driving around for hours because my buddies were playing that, and I thought it was the greatest thing ever that they actually put in the game. But definitely, I think it was a Ford Lightning.
The only reason I'm asking is because I kind of was going back over some of the DRSs and I'm trying to work out if I can create an image of all the first posters that people have had, because we've had a few similar ones. We've had a number of people have had almost the exact same Lamborghini Countach, white Countach, doors open. A few people have had that on their wall. I had that on my wall as well. Mm-hmm. I know we've got the Cindy Crawford poster to add to the list. Okay, Ford Lightning. I'm going to add that to my list of things I need to research.
I definitely had a Ferrari as well. I forgot what it was. It was a 90s front engine Ferrari. I can't remember the name for the life of me, but I definitely had one of those too. Because I have it in an actual Matchbox in the box somewhere.
Nice.
Yeah.
Ooh. I actually have weirdly, I'm saying this, but I have a collection of Matchbox cars and from when I was a kid. And I separated out the cool ones that weren't totally broken and scratched and terrible, and they're in like a separate box. So somewhere in my basement is a collection of Matchbox cars, but within that collection, there are some good ones. I don't know why I did that. I don't know. I have no idea why I'm even saying this at this point. But anyway, welcome to my world.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I can't imagine mine are these days. I can't.
Well, that was awesome, man. Yeah, Josh, thank you so much for doing that, and thanks for being a listener, and thanks for being nice to Rob. Someone's got to do that.
Of course. Nah, he's a great guy. Brian. I feel like you give him a lot of grief on the pod.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. I like you, Josh. Can you come on every week, Josh?
I will if you want. I can do that.
It's going to cost you an awful lot of money. I'm assuming you're paying for today, right, Rob? If any other Dirty Siders out there like us want to participate in the 100 seconds, as always, let us know at F1 Dirty Side on Twitter or at dirtysideofthetrack.com. You can send us a note there through that as well. So thank you again, Josh. That was tremendous.
Of course, anytime.
Amazing, Josh. Thanks so much for joining us. And as I just said, to everybody listening, if you want to be on the 100 Seconds of DRS and hang out for a little bit with us and have a laugh, we'd very much appreciate it. Let us know at F1 Dirty Side on Twitter in the DMs, or you can send us an email, which is found at dirtysideofthetrack.com on our website. Send us an email through that. We really appreciated Josh being here. It was great fun.
Yeah, it was great. It was actually a little bit surreal for me to actually kind of talk to him in an environment that wasn't a swimming pool. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, so that kind of leads us on to what's coming up during the off season. So we're going to stay around. We're going to be kind of trying to bring some content every week. It might be slim pickings some weeks, so you might only get like a smaller dropping of the Dirty Side each week. We're also we've got some guests in the pipeline that we haven't 100% firmed up yet, so we're going to try to get some guests come in. We're also going to try and do an episode with almost like, I guess it's like a DRS of Champions, a Wall of Fame, right? Because the guys on the Discord server are mainly past DRS folk, and we're going to pull together an episode where we have as many of them on as we can, all in one humongous episode. Not quite sure how that's going to work, but that's what we're planning. And open to suggestions if anybody wants us to cover anything, because this time last year we knew we were going to try and focus in on people that were new to the sport. So we did a few episodes of kind of beginner's guides to F1, what do flags do. I fell asleep for the tyres episode, and various.
The best one. I just put my Pirellis back on my car for the winter, and I looked at the dealer as we're sitting there talking about other things. I had to get some other stuff done. I'm like, are they winters? He goes, yeah. I'm like, I mean like inters, but with a W. He goes, what?
Oh, God.
Am I the only one who appreciates that joke?
So if anyone has any suggestions for things they'd like us to cover, we may well throw in some Vale's Tales.
Yes,
Brian and I have got to get off our backsides, and we're going to both buy Formula One 2022 because
I might do it tonight.
We have the cross-play, so Brian on his Xbox can take me on my PlayStation, and we're going to do some kind of... I wish we could both actually have, really... Formula One cars around the Top Gear test track, and we could do bozos in a reasonably priced F1 car.
So there actually is a game with the Top Gear test
Gran
track.
Turismo's got it on.
Oh, well, there's a Circuit Superstars has it too, which is way cheaper. And anyway, we could talk about that
Anyway,
offline.
so if anyone, the long story short, before Brian segued us off onto tyre dealerships, was if anyone, like I say, has got a suggestion, wants us to cover something, then we're open to ideas, because we're going to run out of ideas before the season starts again.
We're good.
So.
I got a lot in the idea log. We're good. We got all
Yes, but
kinds
it's
of
going to
stuff.
involve tyres or just you going through your collection of hats.
Yeah, this is good. I got the Ferrari one. I got the Haas one. I got the Mercedes one. This is good.
Right, I think on that note, because I just can't stare at that hat any longer.
I would say this. We do have some serious guests that we're working on. Please stay tuned. We've got some great stuff coming this offseason. I am excited for what's coming up, even though we don't have a race for a while. And I just say, Rob, man, this is fun. Everybody listening, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We will talk to you next week.